A friend of our friend's best friend's bride-to-be. Yeah, that's a tongueful, but let me just tell you about this chick Tammy. She wants to ruin this upcoming wedding. She wants to change the dress scheme to something unbearable. But let me tell you all about this friend and the bridezilla. Since high school, we've been pretty close group of friends. 3 girls and 2 boys. Ramya, Carla, John, Stu, and me. When we finished high school, we all agreed to go to the same college. And even though we were in different careers, that didn't matter to keep together constantly. We are all like siblings who know each other's deepest, darkest secrets and have supported each other even in our worst times. Like when Carla's grandmother passed away years ago, and we were all with her during grief, or like when Stu had that fatal fall a couple years ago and had to stay with his left arm in a cast for a long time. Worst part was that he's left-handed, so we had to help him with his projects, writing lines and lines of text. To top it off, he studies law and had to transcribe entire articles and analyze them. Anyways, we're all like a small family that loves, cares for, and supports each other. But this was not always the case. I'm talking specifically about one of us, Stu, who from some time now has been dating a girl who, let's just say, she's not to everybody's liking. Her name's Veronica, and she studies with him. We told each other at the beginning of college that we would not date anyone from our classrooms. But according to him, and I quote, she's different, and someone that you can truly trust. Well, once he took her on an outing with us and the atmosphere became a little too uncomfortable for me, she hardly spoke at all. She spent the entire evening on her own phone, and when John, who seems like a never-stopping jukebox, decided to make conversation with her, she just said 2 words and went back to her phone. And I'm not exaggerating, it was literally 2 words, and we all froze. John felt embarrassed, even just like Stu himself. At a subsequent meeting without her, we told Stu that the girl did not match us and that she seemed like the shallow type of girl who tends to break your heart when you least expect it. While he listened attentively, he did not take this well, saying that she's actually communicative and she's just feeling shy to be with a group as solid as ours, since she's never had friendships like that before. Feeling embarrassed and overwhelmed, what's more, he said that she said she had a good time with us and that she liked all of us very much. At first, we didn't quite believe it, but we decided to give Veronica another chance. And well, we finally did. And this time, it did not turn out as bad as the first one, with the girls saying more than 4 sentences. We had a good time and laughed a lot, and so the dynamic began to improve in our meetings. Well, we didn't always hang out with Veronica. In fact, we did not always go out with romantic partners along with the group, because we felt that they were 2 different stratas and that we should keep one on one side and the other apart. That dynamic served us well at the time. After Ramya broke this arrangement by taking a boyfriend who all he did was make her life miserable for 2 months until she bounced him, but Stu tried to group her with us, making it so that while the atmosphere wasn't as tense, it did at least feel different in a weird way. We've tried to talk to him to keep things together, but you don't know how hard it is to talk to someone when you're so in love. A while back, he and I spoke privately, and I told him that now that things with the group had changed because of Veronica's presence, I didn't mean it in a bad way. In fact, I just mentioned that taking her with us could lead to things in the future. He seemed to understand that, and he was quite receptive of it, but I also feel that he did not handle it very well. I say this because he started missing our meetings, and on one occasion he even stood us up, just to stay home with old Veronica and a friend of hers. It was an important meeting for us because it was the anniversary of a very special date that we had since high school. It's just like a funny little thing that we had happen with a PE teacher. We celebrated every year, and it was the first time we did it without him. There was a year when we almost did it without John because he was sick, but we went to his house to meet him. That's our level of commitment I'm trying to tell you guys. Although, we decided not to make a big deal out of it. The truth is that some things did not sit right. As time went on, Stu stopped coming to our meetings. Sometimes we would not even see him, but it was very occasionally when we ever saw him. And he was always with Veronica right there by his side. He looked happy, of course, but I admit that it hurt us a little to see him like that, without being able to be by his side. We understand that everyone has their own life, and sometimes we go out with other friends from other social groups, but we always end up prioritizing our classics and unconditional friendship. And this is the first time that one of us become independent. Is it bad? Not at all. It's something we all knew was going to happen sooner or later, but I admit, we wanted it to be as late as possible. Let's hope at least, he does well with this relationship despite everything. We like to see him happy. And if being with Veronica makes him happy and it looks like it can become something positive in his life, well, good for him. We'll be there to support him 100%. What's up everybody, Mr. Reddito here. I have an update for you. It came out 2 months after the original post, and things start to get a little twisted in the friend group. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. If you're not subscribed to the channel, take a second right now and click that subscribe button so you don't miss daily stories, and here is update number 1, 2 months later. Well, I started writing this about 2 months ago, and the truth is that there's a lot to tell you, but I'll limit myself to talk about my friend Stu's situation. Remember that he was dating this girl, Veronica? Well, after so long, Stu decides to take a big leap with her, and after so much meditation, he proposed to her at a romantic dinner with several other couples' acquaintances, participating with it as well, except for us. As you read it, we were not present during the proposal. Although he told us at the time, we didn't believe right away that it was going to happen. Well, we're wrong. Apparently, and he did it secretly believing that we were going to stand in the way. Although Veronica is perhaps not the best person in the world, because now we know her better, and she's not like the first version we knew of that girl, quiet and aloof. Oh no, she's more spontaneous and has an integration of a little more. To the point that Ramya likes her. Not that the others don't, it's just that they had an afternoon together shopping, and apparently they got closer as they were seen talking more often. But she is still part of our group. And well, it was a bit of a shock to think that one of us would get married at such a young age of 31. Wait, 31's still young, right? Right? But I guess it's time to settle down and think about the future. Before we know it, we'll be having children and families of our own, but it's not all rosy, as now comes with a new complication, the wedding itself. While we were somewhat hurt that Stu did not mention the proposal to us, the fact that he wanted us a part of his celebration, knowing it would be super private, mitigated the pain a bit. The girls and I fantasized about what the event was going to look like, while the pair of doofuses, Stu and John, were just thinking about all the food that would be there. Stu was thinking about the budget, while John was thinking about the all-you-can-eat buffet that he'd be tasting that day. We still told Stu that we could help him with the organization, and he agreed gladly. Carla even told him that she could help me with the meals, since her mother works in a bakery and that's her specialty. She would let him do it at a very reduced price since her mom loves each member of the group as if they were her own children. Well, John would be helping him with decorations, since his sister has an online store that does special events, and since everything will be private, the budget will allow everything to be the most beautiful in the world in a compact place. All in all, Stu knows that he can count on us unconditionally. But there's one thing I'm a little afraid of, and that is Tammy. Oh, Tammy is Veronica's best, and as far as we know, only friend. She was away for a while, but came back to the country about a month ago. And since then, we've had to put up with the pain in the butt we call Tammy. While I had my doubts about Veronica before, with her friend, it's more than confirmed. She's at least 10 times worse than her. She's snooty, arrogant, reckless, spoiled, and even bold when talking. The other day, she came out with us and made a pass at John, clearly knowing that he has a girlfriend because we mentioned it in several ways during the meeting, and she couldn't care less. We discussed the matter with Stu, and even he admitted that he doesn't entirely like Tammy, but he has to put up with it because she's best friends with his fiancé. In a certain sense, the only certain, because it's not the same thing. I mean, it's understandable, because Veronica on several occasions had to be with us, even though it could be awkward for her, I suppose, so it's normal for her boyfriend to do the same. But for real, Tammy's unbearable. She's one of those people who won't stop talking about herself. Every time someone mentions some sort of thing, comment, whatever, she always tries to redirect the conversation back to her, which can mean an imbalance in the girl's ego. The other day, I even had to write her, for the first time, to ask her something about the wedding, and she started looking for conversation, something I wasn't used to or excited about. At first, it seemed very polite to ask me how I was doing, but sooner than later, I knew it was just politeness, because the next second she starts telling me a story about her father, her cousin, and before I knew it, she was calling me as if she was the best of my friends, taking 20 eternal minutes on the phone, talking as if it was a visit to her psychologist. I wasted so much time during that call, and I felt like we didn't make any progress on what we were originally even supposed to talk about. When I told the guys about this experience, none of them laughed, since apparently they've all been through the same thing. Quote, "She called you to tell you about her cousin too? Goodness gracious, she's annoying." And before we knew it, we were discussing all afternoon how irritating she was. Worst of all, she was handling a lot of the stuff regarding the wedding, so we would have to put up with her for a bit longer. We started to worry about it when she starts talking about a well-known chef in town, who made, according to her, the quote, best sushi in the whole darn country, as if she has been a professional taster all around, and that they had to hire him. Do you guys know how much a sushi restaurant cost? Let me give you a hint. Cheapen it. Carla and I were present when Tammy told Veronica about the sushi, and we could see Stu's face change subtly to a slightly more worried expression. It was obvious their budget wasn't the best, and at that rate they were going, it seemed to be one of those weddings where they decided to do the impossible to be the celebration of the year. Something that doesn't go very well with Stu's discreet personality. But it's Tammy who's poisoning Veronica's mind to do whatever she says, because according to her, you only have a wedding once, so make the most of it. Did I mention Tammy's mother has been married 3 times? At first, we wanted to avoid this wedding altogether, but now that we see that it's not an option, then we want to at least take Tammy out of the equation to make this experience enjoyable for Stu, and not a headache. For crying out loud, a wedding is about celebrating love, not making a worried face about buying overpriced sushi that only 40 people will be enjoying. Update number 2. Guys, things have absolutely gotten out of control. Tammy has become a dictator in this wedding planning thing, and I'm writing just a week and a half since my last update. But everything has become a chaos of epic proportions. I'll explain in parts. First, the food issue had already exceeded the budget. I'll explain why later. And now, Carla's mom will only do 1/3 of the food in general, sharing a table with 2 other super expensive chefs. Second, they changed the location of the venue. Now it's going to be in a somewhat secluded and difficult to access property, and with the capacity to host up to 200 guests. Stu was almost fainting when he saw that the new guest list, written, edited, and provided and approved by the one and only Tammy, and felt bad that he didn't know that the vast majority of the guests. We tried to tell Tammy as best we could how excessive the whole thing was, but she now has a different way of dealing with us, since she sees us as detractors to the event. That's right, we're now enemy number one of the wedding that we are planning. According to her, just because that we want to support our friend and not putting up the show of the year, we've even drawn from our savings to offset certain expenses. But it seems that when we manage to pay something for it, Tammy comes along to exaggerate it even more, and cause an uncontrolled outburst. At this point, we even feel sorry for Veronica, whom we believe deep down doesn't want so much fuss for the wedding either. However, she is extremely impressionable, and if Tammy says that 2 + 2 = 5, Veronica forgets that there are calculators to prove it. Each new suggestion Tammy makes leaves her pondering whether it's worth it, but her friend insists so much that in the end, due to social pressure, she ends up agreeing. And it's Stu who pays the price. This morning, I decided to have a talk to the guys, and we wanted to figure out a way to deal with all this. Well, we didn't like the dynamic Tammy was imposing, so we even thought about going to the extreme of intervening Stu and Veronica. We don't know how the conversation can flow, but everyone has solid arguments to make this poor couple see reason. We plan to talk to them tomorrow without Tammy, and we have the backing of Stu's mother, who has also had to watch her son suffer in silence. Let's just hope they don't take it the wrong way. We love them dearly, even Veronica in a sense, and dethroning Tammy would be one of the most purgatorial experiences we'll have in our history of best friends. Update number 3. Well, every friendship suffers from challenges, ups and downs, and with the hard tests that make you see the capacity of the individuals to face the situation. I feel like this is one of them, and I guess it did not have the best outcome. We talked to my friend Stu and his fiancé about their wedding, how it seemed to be overstepping both of their boundaries, and how Tammy was becoming the ultimate ruler of a celebration that wasn't hers in the first place. The conversation went well, actually, with understanding on both sides, both of them reacting and saying that we were right. Well, yeah, of course we're right. And that they would just try to find the most Solomonic option, so that Tammy would not be offended, in the long run at least. From what we could understand, she was going to be vetoed from the project, and if she did not take it well, we couldn't do more about it, and we would continue with the small celebration as it was stipulated from the get-go. But it wasn't like that. I'll tell you what happened after our conversation. We talked, they nodded, we gave our points of views, we parted ways. And we trusted that they would take it over and just talk with each other as a couple, and everything would be fine. We didn't count on Veronica basically going in the day after with Tammy to tell her everything that we discussed at the intervention. We all made a monumental facepalm once we found out, and even Stu was uncomfortable with us about it. It makes me a little sad that at one point John told us, without Stu being there of course, that if it went on like this, we should not attend the wedding. To show our discontent more actively, and we didn't quite agree. While we resented Tammy, we could not allow a stranger to ruin one of our friend's happiest days. As difficult and annoying as it was, we had to go on for him. So leaving him at the altar while tentative was not an option. I continue regarding Tammy. While she did not explicitly dislike us after Veronica told her everything, it was like releasing a dragon from its prison. At first she avoided our contact, but when we first met for rehearsals, she seemed to avoid us. And Ramya tells us that she had approached her to ask something of Tammy, and just turned around and ignored her, leaving the place as if no one had spoken to her from the beginning. We know it's pretty immature behavior, but coming from her, It's the normal thing to do. We continued to contribute as much as possible, but now something seemed different. The environment made it prone to us getting involved in more. How should I put this? Conflicts. To give an example, Carla had coordinated with her mother to make cupcakes for each table. Each guest would have their own, but by decision of the one and only Tammy. It was preferred to serve food without flour, as it wasn't friendly to the celiac community. When only 2 people out of the 200 suffered from the disease. And this was peculiarly ridiculous for Tammy, not saying anything about the cake, which, by the way, would no longer be made by Carla, but by another pastry chef. Something, by the way, that offended Carla's mother deeply. And when she commented to Stu, he almost lost his face in embarrassment. We know that the couple had their complications because, as I said before, Veronica let herself be controlled a lot by Tammy, and now she's even more on her side to sabotage all of our progress. Well, a few days ago, we went through some uncomfortable situations because Stu was now on his own, criticizing some suggestions we had regarding the celebration, and he would refute any idea, and we felt nervous like we'd ruined his plans. Gradually, Stu began to have a rather reactionary attitude towards us, to the point where we could say almost nothing because he was looking for a way to say we were wrong. Well, we came to believe that we had lost the war, losing our friend altogether, and that the option of leaving him alone at the altar was becoming more and more plausible. But then came the guidelines for the bridesmaid that was an especially sore point. Because, well, years ago at a high school reunion, for deluded teenage girl stuff, the girls and I got together and talked about our bridesmaid's outfit at some of our weddings, having the opportunity with Stu to finally debut the design that we made when we had our designer phase. Boy, those were good times. And the guys even told us that if they got married, the bridesmaids would wear the design of ours. And guess what? That's right. Lady Weddingzilla said no. It could not be a dress like that. So it had to be a completely different design. I admit that the girls and I feel defeated, frustrated, and deep down, Stu knows it. He knows he let us down. But at this point, there's not much to do about it. We're now the best and lowest stratum as far as the celebration's concerned. And we're panicking about what this woman will come out with. Maybe an horrible dress and publicly humiliating us, and I know we have our own weddings in the future, but to be so excited about this just to see us with that bitter pill to swallow, it really depresses me. Update number 4. A week ago, for the first time, we were witnessing the first recorded instance of 3 people vomiting at the same time. That was Ramna, Carla, and myself after looking at the bridesmaids' dress models. I don't think I can describe it in words, but it was some of the worst things I've ever seen in my entire life. Don't get me wrong, please, or think that just because it was from Tammy's, we would think anything that she came out with was bad. It's just green? Shiny green for a bridesmaid? And the accessories, my goodness, all those accessories that she said were, quote, to honor foreign cultures, that neither bride nor groom had. Short at the bottom and long at the top. Something super disproportionate and something no one would think about wearing. Not even their worst enemy's funeral to make a fool of them. It seemed to have been on purpose to make all the bridesmaids, which is the 3 of us, Stu's sister, and Tammy herself, the center of attention. Not in a good way. If we wore those outfits, the weddings would be overshadowed and remembered for all the wrong reasons. I even saw Carla shed a tear, seeing our wasted effort go down the garbage. Tammy and Veronica's alibi was that while we had our model from high school, they had theirs from elementary school. After seeing the model, you could see why it was so horrible, so they're saying they won because it's longer. Besides, it was part of the bride's model, so in the hierarchy, we would have to wear it. We all shuddered at the thought of that scenario, and when we tried to talk to Stu about it, his response was, I don't know what you're talking about. I think it's cute. Stu, although a very good friend, is still a man with a taste of muddy dog. He was head over heels in love, and at that point, the last thing he wanted was more conflict regarding anything else on the event. All he wanted at that point was for it to be over, so he could go home to his new wife, and put the bitter pill behind him, if possible. He wouldn't even want pictures to memorize all the stress. Now, Stu was being anti-parabolic to the organization, and worst of all, the day after tomorrow, the stage where the groom was going to stop seeing the bride would begin. So, our communication was going to be almost null, or at least in the sense that we could not convince both parties at the same time. So, we came to see Tammy as the most manipulative and diabolical being in the entire universe. Okay, probably a little bit of an exaggeration, but the anger we had knew no bounds. I'm afraid of what might happen next and whether we can really come out to this okay. What's more worrisome is, if this is how it goes with the wedding planning, what will it be like for Stu to have to live with Tammy as part of his daily life from now on? Something inside me says that if we're bad, he'll be worse off. Update number 5. Final update of the story. Hey guys, buckle up, I have a long one for you. You better sit down, grab a cold drink first, maybe some popcorn, because I will tell you how the story of Stu's wedding ended. Also known as, quote, the biggest project we've ever had our lives on. And it's an event so big that I even feel that fate conspired in our favor so that we could get away with what we did. I say this because just a few days after the wedding began, a very aggressive rainy season started, with the news making it as something that would affect the entire country, its communication and transportation systems. Why is this important? Because a large portion of the wedding guests were a member of Veronica's family that lived in Mexico, and due to the weather, they would not be able to take planes or buses. That drastically reduced the guest list. Stu's family lived in Ireland, and although they were fewer in number, for the same reasons they would not be able to attend. In fact, only the original 40 guests and another 20 plus who live in the area could attend. So much of the food expenses could be cancelled. On the subject of the hideous dress, in the end, we could not use the model we wanted, with Tammy being the winner, only that it was not the same model. You see, at the time of sending the design draft to the seamstress, it accidentally snuck in. One of our models. A not so horrible one. But according to our theory, she talked so much on the phone that she did not pay attention to anything and just left the models without specifying which one was requested. The seamstress, seeing the horrible design, called the only other contact number she had. Mine. And she inquired about which model was required. Is it the garish green one? Because it doesn't look all pretty or easy to make. Well, that's what she said to me, and I replied, well, are there more models there? And when she said yes and mentioned the others that were on the idea sheet, I knew I could and should change it as soon as I can. It wasn't our model, but at least we didn't wear the aesthetic nightmare that was Tammy and Veronica's. And you would have seen their faces when Carla, Ramya, Stu's sister, and I came out changing to reveal a dress. If also green, at least it was a pale one, with some subtle and beautiful matching necklace neckline embellishments. Well, Tammy almost had a heart attack, but Veronica liked the model. So angry was her friend that she decided to call the seamstress up, but was immediately told that someone else had specified another model, and I admitted my guilt, believing it was the model I was referring to it had been theirs. And that's when Tammy exploded, telling us that we wanted to ruin her best friend's wedding, not realizing it was actually her mistake for leaving it in there in the first place. Actually, just to make it more poetic, she left in tears, cursing us all out and saying, I feel like even you guys were the ones who made the rain ruin everyone's trip. and I admit that made us laugh pretty hard. The girl was delirious and claiming not to attend the wedding, so a little glimmer of hope lit up in front of us. I know I sound cruel, but seriously, after all that torment, it felt like a well-deserved W. But no, Tammy did attend what was unprecedented celebration. That's right, the wedding ended up being an event we could all enjoy. Sure, there was some bitter conversations between Stu and us, but after we made our points, he realized how bad it was and chalked it up the stress of the wedding, which, once it was over, he could feel like the happiest man in the world. Tammy herself was able to have some fun, and at one point we were able to dance together until midnight, leaving the bickering behind. Or, well, not quite. We all made a pact to never treat her again like that, and one that between the lines Stu was also a part of, as he confessed to Veronica that her friend wasn't entirely agreeable to him. She confessed to him that Tammy was her only friend since childhood and she had adopted many of her behaviors. But after the wedding, it was the best to let go of the past and make way for the future with him. That made me feel relieved, as if it was a whole cycle that's been closed. Curiously, we were talking yesterday about the dress, repeating the pact that in the next wedding we would use our model. Yes, and we bothered Ramya with the fact because of the guy she met at the reception of the event, with whom she's been dating ever since. I think this growing up and organizing event things is quite a stretch, and it can test some people as it did our friendship. But in the end, I'm glad it all worked out. Gosh, I can't help but get excited to wear that beautiful bridesmaid's dress. Ramya better hurry up with her guy. I can't wait for her wedding. So that was a very interesting wedding story. I want to hear from you guys. If you were in this position, what would you do about the whole dress fiasco? And not only that, but about Tammy basically taking over the wedding as well and just thinking that she can run the show. I want to know your opinion on it, so drop it down below in the comment section. That's all the stories for today. I hope you enjoyed today's story with all the updates. If you did, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Have a fantastic day, guys, and I will see you in the next one. And remember, it's cool to be kind. Catch you later.